How the Little Brother Set Free His Big Brothers. In a small hut, right in the middle of the forest, lived a man, his wife, 3 sons, and a daughter. For some reason, all the animals seemed to have left that part of the country, and food grew very scarce, so one morning, after a night of snow, when the tracks of beasts might be easily seen, the 3 boys started off to hunt. They kept together for some time, till they reached a place where the path had been fallen split in two, and one of the brothers called his dog and went to the left, while the others took the trail to the right. Now, these had not gone far when their dog scented a bear and drove him out of a thicket. The bear ran across a clearing, and the older brother managed to place an arrow right in his head. They both took up the bear and carried it towards home, meeting the third at a spot where they had parted from him. When they reached home, they threw the bear down on the floor of the hut, saying, "Father, here's the bear which we killed. Now we can have some dinner." But father, who was in a bad temper, only said, "When I was a young man, we used to get 2 bears in one day." The 2 sons were rather disappointed at hearing this, and though 3 was plenty of meat for the last 2 or 3 days, they started off early in the morning down the same trail that they had followed before. As they drew near the fork, the bear suddenly ran out of the tree behind them and took the path to the right. The 2 elder boys and the dogs pursued him, and soon as the second son, who was also a good shot, killed him instantly with an arrow. At the fork of the trail on their way home, they met the youngest, who had taken the left-hand road and had shot a bear for himself. But when they threw the 2 bears triumphantly on the floor of their hut, the father hardly looked at them and only said, "When I was a young man, we would get 3 bears in one day." The next day, they were luckier than before and brought back 3 bears, in which their father had told them that he always killed 4. However, that did not prevent him from skinning the bears and cooking them in a way of his own, which he thought was very good, and they all ate an excellent supper. Now, these bears were the servants of a great chief bear who lived in the high mountain a long way off, and every time a bear was killed, his shadow returned to the house of the bear chief, when the marks of his wounds plainly to be seen by the rest. The chief was furious at the number of bears the hunters had killed, and determined that he would find some way of destroying them. So he called another of his servants and "Go to the thicket near the fork where the boys killed your brothers, and directly they or the dogs will see you return here as fast as you can. The mountain will be open to let you in, and the hunters will follow you. And then I shall have them in my power and be able to revenge myself." The servant bowed low and started at once for the fork, where he hid himself from the bushes. By and by the boys came in sight, but this time there were only 2 of them. The youngest had stayed home. The air was warm and damp, and the snow soft and slushy, and the older brother's bowstring hung loose, while the bow of the younger caught a tree and snapped in half. At that moment the dogs began to bark loudly, and the bear rushed out of the thicket and set off in the direction of the mountain. Without thinking that they had nothing to defend themselves with, should the bear turn and attack them, the boys gave chase. The bear, who knew quite well that he could not be shot, sometimes slackened his pace and let the dogs get quite close, and in this way the elder son reached the mountain without observing it, while his brother, who had hurt his foot, was still fairly far behind. As he ran up, the mountain opened to admit the bear, and the boy, who was close on his heels, rushed in after him, and did not know where he was until he saw the bears sitting on every side of him, holding a council. The animal he had been chasing sank, panting in their midst, and the boy, very much frightened, stood still, letting his bow fall to the ground. "Why are you killing all my servants?" asked the chief. Look round, and see their shades with arrows sticking in them. It was I who told the bear today he was to lure you into my power. I shall take care that you shall not hurt my people anymore, because you will become a bear yourself. At this moment, the second brother came up, for the mountain had been left open on the purpose of tempting him also, and he cried out breathlessly, "Don't you see the bear is lying close to you? Why don't you shoot him?" And without waiting for a reply, he pressed forward to drive his arrow into the heart of the bear. But the older one caught his arm and whispered, "Be quiet. Can't you tell where you are?" And then the boy looked up and saw the angry bears around him. On one side were the servants of the chief, and on the other were the servants of the chief's sister. He was rather sorry for the two youths, and begged that their lives might be spared. The chief answered that he would not kill them, but only cast a spell over them by which their heads and bodies should remain as they were, but their arms and legs should change into those of a bear. So they would go on all fours for the rest of their lives. And stooping over a spring of water, he dipped a handful of moss into it, and rubbed it over the arms and legs of the boys. And in an instant, the transformation took place, and two creatures, neither beast nor human, stood before the chief. He gave them the right to bear arms. Now, the bear chief, of course, knew that the boy's father would seek for his sons when they did not return home, so he sent another of his servants to the hiding place at the fork of the trail to see what would happen. He had not waited long when the father came in sight, stooping as he went to look for his son's tracks in the snow. Well, he saw marks of snowshoes along the path on the right, filled with joy, not knowing that the servant had made fresh tracks on purpose to mislead him. And he hastened forward so fast that he fell headlong into a pit where the bear was sitting. Before he could pick himself up, the bear had quietly broken his neck, and hiding the body under the snow, sat down to see if anyone else would pass by. Meanwhile, the mother at home was wondering what had become of her two sons, and as the hours went on and their father never returned, she made up her mind to go and look for him. The youngest boy begged her to let him undertake the search, but she would not hear of it, and told him he must stay at home and take care of his sister. So, slipping on her snowshoes, she started on her way. As no fresh snow had fallen, the trail was quite easy to find, and she walked straight on, till it led her up to the pit where the bear was waiting for her. He grasped her as she fell in and broke her neck, after which he laid her in the snow beside her husband, and went back to tell the bear chief. Hour after hour dragged heavily on in the snow in the forest hut, and at last the brother and sister felt quite sure that, in some way or other, all the family had perished. Day after day, the boy climbed to the top of a tall tree near the house, and sat there till he was almost frozen, looking on all sides through the forest openings, hoping that he might see someone coming along. Very soon all the food in the house was eaten, and he knew he would have to go out and hunt for more. Besides, he wished to seek for his parents. The little girl did not like being left alone in the hut, and cried bitterly, but her brother told her that there was no use sitting down quietly to starve, and that whether he found any game or not, he would certainly be back before the following night. Then he cut himself some arrows, each from a different tree, and winged with feathers of 4 different birds. Then he made himself a bow, very light and strong, and got down his snowshoes. All this took some time, and he could not start the day, but early next morning he called his little dog, Redmouth, whom he kept in a box, and set out. After he had followed the trail for a great distance, he grew very tired, and sat upon a branch of the tree to rest. But Redmouth barked so furiously that the boy thought that perhaps his parents might have been killed under the branches, and he stepped back and shot one of his arrows at the root of the tree. whereupon a noise like thunder shook from top to bottom. The fire broke out. In a few minutes, the little heap of ashes lay in its place where he had stood. Not knowing quite what to make of all this, the boy continued on the trail and went down to the right-hand fork till he came to a clump of bushes where the bears used to hide. Now, as was plain of being able to change the shape of the two brothers, the bear chief knew a good deal of magic, and he was quite aware that the little boy was following the trail. So he sent a small but clever bear servant to wait for him in the bushes and try to tempt him into the mountain. But somehow his spells could not have worked properly that day, as the bear chief did not know that Redmouth had gone with his master, or that he would have been more careful. For the moment the dog ran round the bushes, barking loudly, the little bear servant rushed out in a fright and set out for the mountain as fast as he could. The dog followed the bear, and the boy followed the dog, until the mountain, the house of the great bear chief, came in sight. But along the road the snow was so wet and heavy that the boy could hardly get along, and then the thong of his snowshoes broke, and he had to stop and mend it, so that the bear and the dog got so far ahead that he could scarcely hear the barking. When the strap was firm again, the boy spoke to his snowshoes. "Now you must go as fast as you can, or if not I shall lose the dog and the bear as well." And the snowshoes sang in order that they would run with the wind. As he came along, the bear chief's sister was looking out for the window, and took pity on the little brother, as she had on the two elder ones, and waited to see what the boy would do, when he found that the bear servant and the dog had already entered the mountain. The little boy was certainly very much puzzled at not seeing anything of either of the animals, but had vanished suddenly out of his sight. He paused for an instant to think what he should do next, and while he did, he so fancied he heard Redmouth's voice on the opposite side of the mountain. With great difficulty he scrambled over steep rocks and forced a path through the tangled thickets, but when he reached the other side, the sound appeared to start from the place in which he had come. Then he had to go back all the way again. At the very top, where he stopped to rest, the barking was directly underneath him, and he knew in an instant where he was and what had happened. "Let my dog out at once, Bear Chief!" cried he. "If you do not, I shall destroy your palace." But the Bear Chief only laughed and said nothing. The boy was very angry at his silence, and aiming one of his arrows at the bottom of the mountain, shot straight through it. As the arrow touched the ground, a rumbling was heard, and with a roar of fire broke out, which seemed to split the whole mountain into pieces. The bear chief and all his servants were burned up in the flames, but his sister and all that belonged to her were spared, because she had tried to save the two elder boys from punishment. As soon as the fire had burnt out, the little hunter entered what was left of the mountain. The first thing he saw were his two brothers, half bear, half boy. "Oh, help us!" they cried, standing on their hind legs as they spoke, and stretching out their forepaws to him. "But how am I to help you?" asked the little brother, almost weeping. "I can kill people and destroy trees and mountains, but I have no power over men." The two elder brothers came up and put their paws on his shoulders, and they all three wept together. The heart of the bear chief's sister was moved when she saw their misery, and she came up gently behind and whispered, "Little boy, gather some moss from the spring over there, and let your brothers smell it." With a bound, all three were at the spring, and as the youngest plucked a handful of wet moss, the other two sniffed at it with all their might. Then the bearskin fell from away from them, and they stood upright once more. "How can we thank you? How can we thank you?" they stammered, hardly able to speak, and fell at her feet in gratitude. But the bear's sister only smiled and bade them go home and look after the little girl, who had no one to protect her. And this the boys did, and took such good care of their sister that, as small as she was, she soon forgot that she ever had a father or mother. Okay.